Welcome to Cafeklatsch, a podcast from the University of Florida Center for European Studies. We're brewing dialogue on modern Europe, one conversation at a time. Each episode, we sit down with scholars, speakers, and thinkers to explore the politics, history, and cultures shaping Europe today. So grab a cup, get comfortable, and join us for a thoughtful chat. All right. Thank you for joining us today on Cafeklatsch. We have Dr. Seth Bernstein,
Hello.
a view of history. Dr. Bernstein is talking at our colloquium series that we have coming up on Friday, October 3rd. It's our first of the colloquium series that we have. So do you want to give us a little bit of background on just your research and what you do in the history department? Give us just a little bit of background there.
Sure. So I came to history of Russia and the Soviet Union as a real archive rat, someone who was working in the former party archives that had become open in Moscow and other places, really with qualitative research, like looking at the party archives, trying to find where Wallenstein documents and trying to figure out those stories. Um, and the holy grail of that whole archival mission was to find something in the secret police archives. So for a long time, those were not available. Like if you went to the archives, you're generally working with party archives, like Communist Party or the Soviet state, something like that. Nothing too secret. Everything was secret in the Soviet Union. But the secret police archives were pretty close, especially in Moscow. And then the Ukrainian Revolution happened in 2014, and that opened everything up. I started working in those archives and was just blown away by what you could find in them. Um, and yet it took me forever to try to figure out how to use them. It was so difficult to use them. So, um, eventually I did after a few research trips, but I realized you could also use this new digital technology. Um, well, what I'm talking about in the paper, this semantic searching to try to figure out what's in these police documents that are really poorly cataloged. Um, so that's where I came to this topic.
Okay, fantastic. And your title is called Big Brother, Where Art Thou? Can you give us a little bit of just information on that and where that title came from?
Yeah, so the idea is not only to reference a Coen Brothers movie, which is, the main thing. Um, but the idea is that so I said that um the secret police files were the holy grail. Like we think of the Soviet Union or these Eastern European communist dictatorships of the 20th century. And one of the things you always think about is how those states collected a lot of information on all sorts of people. They surveilled people, they arrested people, they knew everything about everyone. And that's, you know, Big Brother is a reference to George Orwell,
Mhm.
1984,
Right.
that novel about how Big Brother is watching everyone. There's the main character, Winston Smith, who thinks he is trying to evade Big Brother's watch, um, whenever he's able to, and in the end, he gets caught. Um, the idea there is that with these police archives, there is some truth to that. That the police archives are really rich in data. Like lots of people were arrested, lots of people were surveilled. The police were interested in lots of aspects of life, not just like what we think about as standard policing. They weren't interested just in murders and that sort of stuff,
Right.
but all sorts of aspects of life. So for a social historian, your kind of ears and your antenna should go up. This is great material. The problem that, this is the where art you part, or where art thou, that you really can't find it because if you think about how they organized these files, they didn't organize them by the things that you or I would be interested in as social historians. They weren't organizing them by like people who had affairs,
Right.
people who belonged to a certain profession, people who um, believed in a certain thing or um, I don't know, had children in school or things like that. Um, Instead, it was pretty cut and dry, like kind of bare data that is, their crime, when they were born, what nationality they were, and their name. And so for you to find information about those people, you had to already know a lot about them.
Sure.
And that's where the digital technology comes in. That to find them, to become Big Brother as a historian, you can employ this artificial intelligence technology and try to at least get some hints about where certain kinds of files would be located and to mobilize that data.
Okay. Okay. So just to keep the conversation going, I have a few questions here just about the topic and the talk that you're going to be giving on Friday. So to start off, why are the KGB archives such a touchstone for our thinking about the Soviet Union and modern policing practices?
Well, so I mentioned this a little bit that the um, that when we think about the Soviet Union, you're usually thinking about a police state, so much information, um, and of course, in the 20th century, it's kind of a paradigm of our thinking about these states that they are these police states. In some ways, they represent the ultimate version of modern policing. Um, I don't know if I can give an example or not about why these are so useful.
Yeah.
Um, so we think about an investigation, and it's just like the facts of the case, right? It's true that they have a lot of facts of the case, but there's so for my previous book about um, Soviet repatriation, which uh, people who were taken to Germany during World War II and they were brought back and they were treated really badly in Germany. They were forced laborers,
Yeah.
essentially slaves of the
Yeah.
Nazi German regime. But when they came back to the Soviet Union, everyone thought they were traitors because they had worked for the Nazi German regime,
Right.
in factories. So,
Right.
no matter how deprived they were, it was still seen as not a good thing. And a lot of them were investigated, and um, a significant number were arrested. So there's a lot in those kind of files about those people, but we would never know who they are just based on their name. So
Sure.
there's a fellow named Yevgeny Kiselyov, a really generic name in the Soviet Union or in Russian or Ukrainian context. So this guy, you would never know it, but his file it includes like 400 pages of interrogations with him. He's talking about not only the things he supposedly did, he supposedly had sold out people to the Germans during World War II.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows if he did or not, but besides the facts of his crime, which are very politicized, there's also these pretty apolitical aspects about his life in DP camps, displaced persons camps, his girlfriend, his wife, he had both, and his just life in the DP camps, and alongside that, there's something like 80 photographs. Like, he had the time of his life in these camps. You can tell from the photographs, he's, like, partying and this whole sort of, like,
Yeah.
touring Leipzig. It's kind of amazing, and you would never know that just based on, you know, the name on his file, like, the
Yeah.
catalog. You would never get that.
Right, right. Okay, fantastic. I have follow-up questions, but I'm gonna hold those until, probably Friday at Colloquium.
Alright.
Another question, how has archival access changed in the last 30 or 40 years after the fall of the USSR and with the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
Well, this is a really tricky topic. Um, it's kind of the best of times and the worst of times.
Right,
Because in places like Ukraine or in Estonia or, the Baltic states, archival access has become much better.
right,
Right now, you can get access to secret police files, especially if you're a researcher. In Ukraine, everything is open. It's um, almost too much. It's, if you're talking about investigation files from the 1980s, those people are still alive in a lot of cases.
yeah,
So it's actually kind of dangerous to have that information in public, or at least, maybe ethically problematic.
sure.
Um, but we also are in the worst of times because the invasion of Ukraine has meant that you really can't get to the archives. And you could go to Ukraine and um, you could try to work in the archives, but you'd have a you'd be endangering yourself. Um, that's one aspect of it. But with the secret police archives as well,
Mhm.
you just can't get to them. Like they're not letting you in the secret police
I
archives.
can imagine, yeah.
Um, so there's also been this really big paradigm shift in the last 5 years or so since the 1990s, it was possible to get into the archives. With the fall of the Soviet Union, a lot of things became open, and the trend was for more and more things to be opened from 1990 until 2020, basically,
Yeah.
um, with some exceptions. But in Russia, in the last 5 years, and that's where the central Soviet archives are, we're now seeing a situation where even if you're working in Russia as a foreigner, you can't get in the archives. So, I have colleagues who are like have somehow remained in Russia,
Yeah.
and they're not able to work in the archives. And if you're a graduate student, it'd be problematic to go to Russia anyway right now.
Right, right.
But even if you're willing to, you could not get in the archives, in the state archives at this point. So it's really shifted the kinds of things that are possible in the field and the kinds of methodologies we have to use to get data.
Right, right. Again, more follow-up questions, but I'll save those. The last question that I do have written down is, what is the potential role and pitfalls of using AI to write history, especially with surveillance files?
So this is where the methodologies can change and can really help us. Um, so when we're limited in the kind of files we can get, it makes it harder for us to find that central base of data to do a topic or to. So you could go to the archive in Russia before, and there might be a ministry or a kind of department within a ministry that would be interested in whatever your topic was. Like you're interested in beekeeping. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you like beekeeping?
No, I don't.
You don't like bees?
They terrify me. No, I'm more into crocheting, basket weaving, stuff
I
like
see.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, bees are terrifying, which makes the people who work with them fascinating, right?
Yeah,
Yep,
absolutely,
that's right.
absolutely.
So the beekeeper, there's probably a ministry of not of beekeeping, but of agriculture, and within the Ministry of Agriculture, there's a beekeeping department or whatever. So the beekeeping department would have a lot of stuff about bees. I'm looking at the bee poster
Oh,
over
yeah.
there. Yeah. So, um, you can't get to that right now in Moscow. It's just not available. And if you wanted to write about beekeeping for whatever reason,
Mhm.
you might want to look at beekeepers. Like there were beekeepers who were arrested, I'm sure. I don't know. I don't know any of them, but conceivably there are beekeepers who were arrested, or there are just beekeeping files spread across all of the post-Soviet archives that are available and are increasingly digitized. So that's another thing that's happened in the last really 10 or 15 years as
Yeah,
it become more digitized.
yeah, sure.
So, how are you going to find these beekeeping files um, when you can't access the central kind of logical place for it? Well, you need to employ some kind of not targeted searching,
Mhm.
but a really extensive search,
Mhm.
um, using this kind of uh, either like keyword searching, but
Mhm.
even better is semantic searching, which is what I used in this paper. That's where you search for something, um, you search by meaning rather than by keywords. So
Okay.
so instead of just searching for beekeeping, or like I was a beekeeper in the Soviet Union, and it would search through all the files
Yeah.
and it would match that exact term. I was a beekeeper in the Soviet Union. If you're doing semantic searching, it'll find things that are related to beekeeping, um, in a but not only beekeeping. So
Right.
there could be things that are related to hives, and it would find that too, or things that are related to other kinds of
So
insect.
it broadens the range, essentially.
Right, it searches not by meaning, but not by the exact match of a word, but by meaning.
Okay.
So, if you wanted to look at domestic violence, which is a really hard subject to research, is also, like, not only morally and ethically, it's, like,
Right.
quite difficult, but also it's, like, there's no Department of Domestic Violence,
Right.
and, you could find, like, police archives about it. There's probably a statute that you could look up or whatever. But even then it's kind of hard because the statutes probably cover a number of things.
Right.
So in these digitized files, you know, if you're doing a keyword search even, that's kind of difficult because what would be the keywords for domestic violence?
Domestic violence would be the one thing I think of, but
Well, if you're thinking about like, how do people don't describe it as domestic violence.
right. Right.
Historically, that's what we describe it as right now.
Right.
Terms change.
Sure.
But you'd think about like, I don't know, he hit his wife. right?
Right.
Or sheep eat the children, or
Yeah.
something like that. And there's all sorts of ways that you can describe it. But that means that a keyword search is kind of difficult
Sure.
because like
Sure.
punch can match onto a lot of things, or slap
Right.
can match onto a lot of things, or wife and husband can match onto a lot of things. So really you need that semantic meaning. You need the semantics of it to figure out what's going on. And that works well with this new technology.
Okay.
So, the idea is that now that we're deprived of these central central databases
Mm.
for certain topics, it really makes those that extensive searching that you can do more important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's problematic too, though. Like,
How so?
were you a graduate student ever, or
Not at UF, but yes.
yep?
Yeah.
Do you ever have like a research
Oh,
assistantship?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, what did you do for your research assistant?
I studied COVID. It was right in the middle of
Oh,
COVID-19,
nice.
so I
What have you doing?
polls mainly.
Yeah. So, what do you mean by polls?
Just polls with people who worked in, like, healthcare fields during COVID, hospitality, really anything any workers.
So you're interviewing them
Yeah, interviewing.
and then coding the data, or
Yeah, coding it, graphing it. Yeah.
yeah. So that's all stuff that you can do with AI now.
Oh, fantastic.
They Well, but this is what I'm getting at is that mm, there are really 2 problems. One is that, like, professionally, it's going to be really problematic for, I mean, they're talking about in all sorts of different fields, but that lower rung of the professional ladder
Yeah,
is being pulled out because instead of hiring a few research assistants to look for domestic violence cases,
yeah,
I would just outsource that to AI and it would do a better job in some ways, a
yeah,
worse job in other ways, but
yeah,
it would do, arguably just as good a job overall.
yeah, sure.
So that's one problem
Yeah,
that we're really depriving, masters and graduate and PhD students of that experience. The other problem is that when you outsource it to um, AI, then you end up not really understanding how the archives work and missing out on that experience as a researcher
right,
of like knowing how this bureaucracy works. So like not going to the beekeeping bureaucracy, but just looking up beekeepers.
right, right.
And so you don't know, like you don't get that in-person experience, especially if you don't have to travel there.
Right, and that's the thing I know, especially with research, is you dive into the field, and if you're not having those person-to-person interactions or whatever it is, that hands-on experience, how do you really get the full experience? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or as a, an archival researcher, it wasn't only about going to the archives, but also about being in the city
Yeah.
and looking around and understanding what it would have meant for someone to, walk from one place to another place in the city, or
Yeah.
um, like how far away different places were, or how cold it was at certain times of year.
Yeah.
And just to have that, I mean, you can look that up too, but it's really does help to have that ingrained knowledge.
Right.
Um,
Right, absolutely, because it's that first-hand experience,
right.
you know? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we close up, is there anything that maybe we didn't touch on today that you want listeners or those who will be attending colloquium to look forward to or to know before the talk on Friday?
Well, I'm going to do a demonstration. So there's that. It'll
Oh,
be very exciting to look at the inner workings of Hypergator. Um, I know that's like a big buzzword
yeah.
for people, and no one know what it is, and it's actually not very exciting to look at. So that'll be
Okay.
um, like a lot of expectations. I guess I'm really building things up and also deflating it
Yeah,
at the
no,
same
it's
time.
gonna be fantastic. It's
Yes,
gonna be
sure.
the best ever.
Yeah, I think so. You'll be hypergatored out.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Perfect. Well, thank you again for being with us today, Seth.
definitely.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us on Cafeklatsch. Until next time, keep the conversation brewing, and we will see you on the next Cafeklatsch.